It all started with a mop in her hand, and the whole gym laughing in her face. The dojo was buzzing, applause, belts snapping, sneakers squeaking on the mats, parents with smartphones, kids fidgeting in crisp new jizz, instructors lining up proud students for photos. It was promotion day at Kessler Combat Arts, the biggest dojo in Richmond, Virginia. And while everyone else looked ahead at the stage, one woman quietly mopped the back corner. Carla Brown. No belt. No badge. Just a janitor uniform and some worn-down New Balance shoes. She barely spoke. She never corrected anyone. Never stepped on the mat. But when one of the younger kids, about 10, maybe 11, messed up a front stance, Carla couldn't help herself. She leaned in, real low, and gently whispered, "Pivot your back foot, you'll have more balance." It was meant to be kind, helpful, soft. But Sensei Brad Kessler, 6th-degree black belt, former Pan Am competitor, local martial arts celebrity, heard it. He turned around slowly, eyebrows raised like someone had just told a joke that wasn't funny. "The janitor's giving tips now?" He chuckled. A few parents laughed. Some students did too. He took a step forward, eyes locked on Carla, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "You think you know better than me? All right then, beat me. Beat me in front of my students, in my dojo, and I'll take this belt off right now." Carla looked at him, calm, still holding the mop. And just like that, the entire room froze. No one expected her to say yes. But she didn't say anything at all. She just placed the mop to the side and stepped forward. That's when everything started to shift. They saw a mop before they saw a woman. Carla Brown, 46, quiet, invisible, was the kind of person people walk past every day without noticing. Worn sneakers, calloused hands, janitor's badge pinned to a faded shirt. A woman who showed up before the doors opened and stayed until the last mat was rolled. In that dojo, she wasn't Coach Carla. She wasn't Sensei Brown. She was Miss Carla the janitor. She moved through their space like a ghost, helpful, steady, but silent, always keeping to herself. And in a place like Kessler Combat, silence gets mistaken for weakness. Sensei Brad Kessler stood in full contrast. Starched gi, black belt with 6 gold stripes, tall, fit, charming. A local martial arts figure who ran weekend workshops at Henrico High and trained city officials on Tuesdays. Everyone knew his name, and that's exactly how he liked it. To his students, Brad was a legend. To parents, a role model. But behind the smile, he carried a chip on his shoulder the size of Virginia Beach. So when Carla stepped onto that mat, without a G, without a title, without so much as a stretch, the room didn't just chuckle, it cracked up. "You gonna sweep the mat or sweep him? Don't break a hip, Granny. Somebody get her a walker." Even the younger kids joined in. They weren't being cruel, not on purpose. They were just following the room's lead. Brad's lead. Carla stood still through it all. She didn't crack, didn't snap. She didn't accept that challenge because she thought she could win. She accepted because something deep in her knew someone had to call the bluff. This wasn't about belts. It wasn't about status. It was about dignity. Carla had spent decades being underestimated, as a mother, as a worker, as a woman, but she'd also spent decades in spaces no one knew about. And as the gym laughed, the mop bucket sat by the wall like a witness. She took off her ID badge, stepped barefoot onto the mat, and everything got quiet. This was no longer a joke. It was the beginning of a shift. Before the mop, before the mat, before the silence. Carla Brown was a storm. She was born in Newark, New Jersey, 1978. The kind of place where sirens were more common than lullabies, and the corner store was where kids learned their first hard lessons. Her mother, Patricia, struggled with addiction. Her father, gone before her 2nd birthday. By the time Carla turned 7, the state had already visited the apartment twice. When her mother overdosed one bitter February night, Carla was just 9 years old. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just sat in the hallway, coat zipped up, waiting for someone to tell her where to go next. That's when her grandmother, Miss Loretta, stepped in. Loretta Brown was made of brick and prayer. Retired cafeteria worker, wore house shoes to church, and didn't take lip from anyone under 6 feet tall. She moved Carla into a 2-bedroom in the South Ward and said, "You're gonna learn how to stand up for yourself, or this city'll eat you alive." Carla was 12 the day 3 girls jumped her walking home from Harriet Tubman Middle. They didn't steal anything. They just wanted to show her who ran the block. She came home with a split lip, 1 sneaker missing, The next morning, her grandma didn't say a word, just walked her 5 blocks down to a rundown community center. The sign read, "Judo, tuition free, girls welcome." That was the beginning. By 14, Carla was tossing full-grown men across mats in Newark tournaments. By 17, she had a shelf of medals that sagged under the weight. At 19, Carla Brown stood in the finals of the USA Judo Nationals and won, twice. She was fast, calculated, brutal when she had to be, a prodigy in a sport that rarely saw black women on the podium. But in the Olympic trials for Sydney 2000, one wrong pivot, one mistimed landing, and it all snapped. Her ACL gave out with a sound like breaking wood. Doctors told her she'd walk again, maybe teach one day. But as for competition, that chapter was over. She disappeared after that. Not out of shame, out of survival. For years, Carla drifted, lived in Baltimore, taught self-defense at battered women's shelters, free of charge. She said it helped her sleep at night, knowing someone could fight back. Then in 2009, her younger sister Dana was shot during a robbery gone wrong in East Baltimore. That broke Carla in ways even judo couldn't fix. She spiraled, couch surfed, lost jobs, ended up sleeping in her car for 6 months behind a laundromat on West North Avenue. But Carla didn't stay down. She never did. By 2015, she was back on her feet, renting a tiny apartment, working 2 jobs, one of which was at Kessler Combat Arts in Richmond, Virginia. It was supposed to be temporary, just a paycheck. No one there knew who she really was. No one knew she'd been on ESPN, that she'd stood on national podiums, that she once trained Olympic hopefuls before sunrise. To them, she was just the woman with the mop. And Carla liked it that way. Until today. Until that moment. Until the challenge. She didn't step forward because she missed glory. She stepped forward because when dignity knocks, you answer. It was the silence that hit first. Not the flip, not the fall, but the silence. A gym full of egos and belts, suddenly breathless. Carla Brown, no belt on her waist, no GI on her back, stepped onto that mat like she was stepping through time. No one cheered, no one clapped, even the smart mouths fell shut. She didn't stretch, didn't bounce, didn't scan the room. She just stood still, hands at her sides, eyes locked on Brad Kessler. He was already smirking. A 6th-degree black belt, dojo owner, former state kumite champ, wearing $150 Hayabusa gloves and the confidence of a man who hadn't been challenged in years. "First point wins," he said, loud enough for the room to hear. "You sure you want to do this, Miss Mop?" He said it with a chuckle, not cruelty, but every word dripped with what the room already believed, that this was about to be a humiliation. Carla didn't blink. She bowed. Not a nervous bow, not a shaky one. It was precise, old school, like something out of a VHS tape from 1989. And that's when the few who really knew, the older students, the ones who had seen real fighters before, leaned in. Her stance, it was textbook. No wasted motion. Weight perfectly centered. Arms low, not wide. Hips tucked just so. The bell rang, and Brad came at her. Fast, too fast. A flurry of movement. His foot pivoted right, body faint left, arms sweeping into a low grab meant to catch her off balance. But she wasn't there. Carla dipped under him like water beneath a bridge, pivoted, and in one explosive move, she lifted the 210-pound black belt clean off the ground. What followed looked almost accidental, like a stumble. But it wasn't. It was a seoi-nage, one of the oldest judo throws in the book. Brad hit the mat with a thud so loud, even the Bluetooth speaker on the wall skipped. Gasps, real gasps. Not polite oohs, not whoa for the sake of drama, real ones. Even the teenagers who'd been clowning 2 minutes ago were wide-eyed. One kid dropped his phone. Another took a step forward like he couldn't believe what he saw. Brad groaned. Not hurt, just stunned. Carla, she stepped back. No pose, no smirk, just quiet. That was the moment the room shifted. The mat didn't belong to Brad anymore. The respect didn't belong to his belt anymore. Carla hadn't just taken the challenge, she'd taken control. Not with anger, not with showboating, but with mastery, with calm, with proof. And suddenly, no one was laughing. By the second round, it wasn't even a fight. It was a lesson. Carla Brown wasn't just defending herself anymore. She was instructing mid-match. "You lean too far left," she said softly, slipping under Brad's strike like it was a slow-motion rehearsal. "That's why your students keep getting pinned." She said it like a coach, like someone who'd corrected that mistake 1,000 times before. not someone who was supposed to be sweeping floors an hour ago. Brad blinked, confused, shook out his shoulders and came in harder, sloppier. Carla spun and caught him with an inside trip, uchigari. Clean, controlled. He hit the mat again. The room didn't gasp this time. It watched. She didn't gloat. She offered a hand. Brad refused it, pushed himself up with a red face and clenched jaw. But Carla was already explaining. Your grip's too shallow. That's why you lose control when they rotate. It wasn't taunting. It wasn't showboating. It was clarity. And the people in the room, they saw it. The ones who had trained under Sensei Brad for years. The ones who had failed belt tests, lost tournaments, doubted themselves. They started whispering, "Who is she? Did you see that throw?" She knew his move before he did. In the back corner, a teenage girl named Alondra pulled out her phone, didn't say anything, just typed the name from Carla's locker tag, C. Brown. She added, "Judo, USA." It didn't take long. A grainy video from 1999 popped up, USA Judo Nationals, Women's 70-kilogram final. Announcer's voice crackling through speakers. Carla Brown with the fastest ippon of the tournament. Alondra's eyes widened. She pressed play again, then again. More students began to crowd around her. Watching a woman in her prime, in a white GI with a black belt, tossing elite-level fighters like they were sparring dummies. And right there, standing barefoot on the mat, that same woman was repeating the exact same movements. Only now, she was up against a man who had laughed at her for mopping sweat. Brad didn't know. Not yet. But his students did. One by one, their expressions changed, from laughter to confusion to recognition. This wasn't just a fluke. This wasn't luck. This was exposure. Every time Brad lunged, Carla dismantled him. Every time he reset, she corrected his form mid-grapple. Not for applause, but because she couldn't not teach. The dojo was quiet now, not with tension, but realization. Brad, for all his rank, had cracks. Cracks no one dared point out until Carla, and she didn't just point, she showed. Technique by technique, step by step, the image of invincibility that Brad Kessler had built, the belts, the trophies, the bravado, was unraveling one clean takedown at a time. And somewhere in the crowd, someone whispered what the whole room was thinking. She's not the janitor, she's the real sensei. There wasn't even a thud this time. Brad hit the mat like it was expected, clean, centered, controlled. The room stood still. Carla didn't gloat. She didn't raise a fist or offer a smirk. She stepped forward and extended her hand again. Same hand she offered when this began. This time, Brad took it. As he stood, Carla looked him in the eye, calm, not cold, and said just loud enough for the front row to hear, "It's not about beating you. It's about reminding you. Belts don't make masters. Respect does." And just like that, the illusion cracked completely. From the corner, a soft flicker broke the silence. A projector beam. Alondra, still clutching her phone, had connected it to the gym's media screen, and there she was. Teenage Carla Brown, 1999. USA Judo Nationals. The grainy screen showed a young black woman with a tight bun and locked-in eyes, circling an opponent twice her size. The match didn't last 30 seconds. The throw was devastating. Harai Goshi, hip sweep, textbook perfection. Then another clip. 2000 Olympic trials. Carla delivering a shoulder throw that earned a standing ovation from the crowd in Colorado Springs. The gym now stood shoulder to shoulder, watching in stunned silence. A door creaked open in the back. Coach Reggie, longtime assistant instructor, walked in mid-replay. He froze, eyes locked on the screen, then on Carla. You trained under Coach Myra Lewis?" His voice broke the tension like a pin on glass. Carla nodded once, quietly. Reggie's jaw dropped. "Man, I used to study your fights in college. You were the standard. Wait, no, you still are." That was the moment. The moment the system, the perception, the hierarchy, the assumed truth, collapsed. It had never been about the GI, the title, the belt. Brad hadn't been schooling a janitor. He'd been scrambling against a former national champion, a fighter trained under one of the most respected judo minds on the East Coast. And he didn't know, because he never asked. Because the system never looked past the mop bucket and the work shirt. Now he stood still, surrounded by his own students, who for the first time looked at him the way they used to look at Carla. But it wasn't shame they wore. It was awe. A quiet, blooming awe. Not just for what she did, but for what they missed. Carla had been in that building for years. She swept their floors, mopped their sweat, watched their drills, silently corrected mistakes no one else caught. She was there at dawn, after tournaments, during belt ceremonies, and nobody, not one student, not even Brad, ever asked about her story, until her story told itself. No stage, no spotlight, just the mat. The same mat that once dismissed her, now watched her reclaim her name. Brad stood in the center of the mat, eyes lowered. His breathing was shallow, not from exhaustion but realization. He untied his belt, slowly, deliberately, and laid it flat on the mat between them. 6 golden bars, years of earned accolades, prestige, recognition. But in this moment, it didn't feel like a symbol of mastery. It felt like a reminder of how far he'd drifted from the core of the art. "You were right," he said softly. "I forgot what this is all about." Carla didn't flinch. She picked up the belt, not with hesitation but with care, like she was handling something heavy, not in weight but in meaning. Then she stepped forward, held it out to him, and said with calm, quiet clarity, "Keep it, just teach better." The message landed harder than any throw. There was no triumph in her voice, no need to humiliate, just truth, and a challenge that couldn't be dodged with footwork. Brad took the belt back with trembling hands. For once it seemed to humble him. In the bleachers, the youngest students began to clap. Then the teens, then the parents, then even Coach Reggie. It wasn't a standing ovation. It was something quieter, reverent. Like they knew they had all witnessed a kind of justice that doesn't come from a courtroom. And then the idea sparked. One by one, hands raised across the gym floor, from kids, from moms, from former students, from staff. Someone called out, "She should be teaching here." Another added, "Full-time instructor, we vote yes." Then, unanimous. Cheers, applause, stomping feet on hardwood. But Carla smiled and shook her head. "Thank you. But no," she said gently. "I like my hours. I like my peace." She turned toward the wall where the mop still waited. But just before stepping off the mat, she paused. "I'll teach 1 class a week. For the girls, for the moms, for anybody who's ever been told they're not enough. First lesson's free. Come as you are." And just like that, she reclaimed not just a space, but a purpose. Not one earned through approval, but one carried from every struggle she never bragged about, from Newark to Baltimore. From national titles to sleeping in her car. Carla Brown didn't need a belt. She didn't need applause. She had respect. And in the world of martial arts, that's the only victory that lasts. It's late afternoon, and the headstones glisten from a light summer drizzle. Carla walks alone between the rows. No camera, no crowd, no applause. Just silence and memories. She kneels before a modest grave, the inscription barely visible beneath moss and age. Her sister's name carved in stone, Danielle Brown, 1977 to 2003. A pause. Then, with steady hands, Carla reaches into her coat pocket. She pulls out something small, round, gold, worn by time. Her tournament medal from the '99 U.S. Judo Nationals. Not flashy, not heavy, but filled with history. She lays it gently at the base of the headstone. "You told me to never stop fighting," she whispers. "I'm finally listening. There's no violin swell, no big speech, just a quiet connection across time. 2 sisters, one gone too soon, the other still carrying her fire." Carla rises, brushes off her knees, and walks away, head high, shoulders square. Cut to Richmond. A community gym. Not Brad's dojo, but a multi-purpose rec center just off Hull Street. Inside, the energy is electric, not from yelling or bravado, but curiosity and courage. Carla stands barefoot at the center of a circle. Around her, women of all ages, moms, teens, a young girl still wearing her school uniform. No gis, no belts, just people ready to learn. She's demonstrating a wrist escape, slow, clear, precise. "It's not about being stronger," she says. "It's about knowing where to shift your weight. Your power is already there. You just gotta unlock it." The room is silent, hanging on every word. A 9-year-old raises her hand. Carla kneels beside her and smiles. "Wanna try it?" The girl nods, nervous but determined. Their hands meet. The move is simple, but when the girl pulls it off, the room erupts in cheers. Carla doesn't bask. She just nods with approval and says, "See? Told you. It's in you." And just like that, the legacy continues, not in medals or headlines, but in every woman who leaves that room standing a little taller. No belt required, just belief. How many Carla Browns walk among us every day? Not just in gyms, but in hospitals, warehouses, classrooms, kitchens. Women and men who carry quiet genius behind calloused hands and stitched name tags. Brilliant, bruised, forgotten. Carla wasn't some mythical underdog. She wasn't magic. She was just unseen. For years, her knowledge was mopped over, passed by, dismissed because she didn't wear the right uniform, didn't speak in the right way, didn't carry a belt that people respected. She had the talent, she had the experience, but in the eyes of most, she was invisible. And yet, how many Carlas do we walk past every single day? How many janitors once coached champions? How many cashiers once ran businesses? How many women know how to protect themselves and others, but are never asked to teach? This story was never about martial arts. It wasn't about a black belt. It wasn't even about a dojo. It was about power. Who gets to hold it? Who gets to be respected? Who gets erased? Carla Brown didn't just win a match. She cracked a mirror. She showed us how easily confidence gets mistaken for competence, how institutions often reward charisma over character. And when that mirror broke, it forced everyone in the room to see what they'd been ignoring for years. She didn't want the belt. She didn't want revenge. She wanted respect, and not just for her. For every woman, every older worker, every nobody who spent their life quietly carrying strength no one bothered to look for. You didn't just watch a story. You witnessed a truth that's far too common and far too ignored. Because Carla Brown isn't fiction, she's a reflection. Of that woman you passed in the hallway, that man you ignored at the gas station, that elder you assumed had nothing left to teach. What if behind the mop, behind the name tag, behind the silence, there was genius? What if the most powerful person in the room is the one nobody noticed? This isn't just entertainment. It's a reminder to see people, to question assumptions, to stop waiting for greatness to wear a label. So, if this moved you, hit that like button, subscribe. Turn on the bell because the stories we tell here, they're not make-believe. They're real, they're raw, and they're about people you'll never forget. Next time you see the janitor, the cook, the bus driver, don't just pass by. Ask yourself, what's their story? And maybe, just maybe, take the time to find out.